Which shoe is better to hoop in? The Adidas Dame 8 or the Nike Zoom Freak 3? What's up, guys? I'm Landon from Shoe Wear, and today we're putting the most recent signature shoes from Damian Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo's shoe lines head-to-head to see how they compare. But really quick, if this is your first time checking us out, feel free to drop a follow or subscribe wherever you're watching and give this video a like. We would greatly appreciate that. So taking a quick look at the box and the price, the Dame 8s get a pretty sweet box. This was actually, the first pair to release, and it came with a cool boxing theme that does show up on the shoes in a few spots as well. And then now looking at the Zoom Freak 3s, these are going to come in an orange box with Giannis's player logo, kind of off-center down in the bottom corner. It is going to be a little bit more simple for the design, but as for the pricing, the Dame 8s did jump up $10 from last year, and they're now going to retail for $120, which still isn't a bad price at all, especially for him being on his 8th model. And the Zoom Freak 3s are actually going to match the retailing for the same $120 amount. So I mean, it is going to be a little bit more on the cheaper side for these signature shoes, so you have to like that. So checking out the appearance for these shoes and starting off with the colorways, today we're checking out the Adidas Dame 8 Dame Time versus the Nike Zoom Freak 3 in this Nike color scheme. So looking at the Dame 8s first, these are going to get that same boxing theme. It's going to show up on the inside of that little pull tab where you see that fourth quarter KO text on the inside of the upper. But there were a few changes made to the structure on this year's model. Adidas did put a curved design kind of into the midsole compared to, they had like a wing design running up in that same area on the 7s. And in the past few years, I will say that, Dame's line hasn't really changed all that much. They have followed a similar setup, but I do like how his shoes have been looking, so it doesn't really bother me. But these do have a pretty noticeable color break in the middle of the shoe. That is going to be similar to like the setup on the Jordan Zion 1s, how they kind of broke the shoe up into the front to the back, the same type of way. But I'm honestly just hoping Adidas will eventually do that extended play series like they did on the Dame 7s with that whole EXTPLY theme, because I think some really sick colorways came out of that. And I also like the small tweaks that they made to the model too. And then on the tongue for these, it's going to be a little bit more plain in the middle, but it is going to have a pull tab off to the side. So there's a few weird pull tab placements on here, like on the tongue, on the inside of the upper. I mean, Adidas is definitely switching it up a little bit. But now switching it over to look at the Nike Zoom Freak 3s. Nike did add the strap to this year's model that wasn't there on the Zoom Freak 2s last year, and I think that gives these a nice touch. And they even put his nickname on the inside part of it. And personally, I think the strap is just a really nice feature to add because it opens up some creative options, and obviously it has a functional purpose for support too. But that's really the only piece that they switched up on this year's design compared to last year's that I did like. I mean, the reverse swoosh on the upper is a little bit too small. For some reason, I'm just not really feeling it. And on Nike's first shoe that they did for him, like the Zoom Freak 1s, where it was built into the midsole reverse swoosh, that was I love those. Those were so clean. And they actually just leaked a potential Zoom Freak 4s that have another bigger reverse swoosh on the outside of the upper. So I think those look really nice too. I am excited to test those out. Hopefully they will be releasing soon. I know they were supposed to, release in August, and we're already midway through it. It hasn't happened yet, but I mean, back to these, the midsole is going to be a little bit funky with the curves in my opinion, and you're going to get some Nike text on the tongue that it's just there to kind of reference the colorway name. So I'll still say this, it's not a bad look. It's just not, going to maybe be my favorite. But now let's go ahead and see how each of these shoes hold up. So now getting into more of the materials and the performance side, and starting off with the cushioning, the Dame 8s get a dual density Bounce Pro cushioning setup, and that's designed to give you the perfect ratio of energy return, cushioning, and support, and this is a nice model to play in. Adidas used a light strike cushioning setup on the Dame 7, but honestly they had a really similar feel. The impact protection on the Dame 7, on the Dame 8, that's what we're reviewing today. The impact protection on the Dame 8 had a really good feel just whenever you're landing from any type of jump, and at the same time though, I will say it's not going to be the softest model, but they are balanced from the front to the back. I do like that. But now looking at the Zoom Freak 3s, I do think that some improvements were made to the cushioning from this year's model, just comparing them to the Zoom Freak 2s. So in the front half of the shoe, it's going to be hollowed out, and that's where you have two Zoom Air units that account for most of the soft feel that you're going to get from the shoe. With those cushioning units being a little bit more loaded in the forefoot, it's not like the heel feels bad, but I would say that, it's going to be a little bit more top loaded for the cushioning. And I mean, you spend most of your time on your toes anyways whenever you're playing ball. So I honestly used to prefer more balanced cushioning setups, but honestly now I just like whatever feels the softest. I do think that the Zoom Freak 3s have a little bit more layers of protection compared to the Dame 8s if I'm nitpicking. For materials and support, the Dame 8s have some textiles covering the upper with some TPU overlays in a few different places. And on the back of the Dame 8s, you actually get a small Achilles pillow that I really didn't notice much while I was playing in these, but it is there. And for $120, I mean, the materials aren't going to be anything premium, but I haven't had an issue playing in these so far. And even with there being nothing necessarily geared to help with the support, such as an outrigger, a strap, a built-up midsole, I mean, I guess you do have that Achilles pillow in there, but I mean, it still does a good job of keeping your foot in place, so nothing to worry about with the support on these. But now looking at the Zoom Freak 3's, Nike did add the strap to the first time for Giannis's line. But other than that, same with the Dame 8's. The materials are nothing to really brag about. The upper is going to be really light, and the ventilation, that helps make the ventilation really good for your foot. But compared to the Zoom Freak 2's, the support just isn't quite as strong because of that. I mean, the materials that they used on the 2's compared to these, I mean, it was just a little bit more sturdier last year, so the support might suffer a little bit because of that. But I mean, there also are some features to help with the support specifically on this year's model. Like Nike did add the strap for some additional lockdown. Then you're also going to get an outrigger in that spot where you have that air text kind of built into the midsole. That just kind of gives you a wider base and also helps brace your foot within the shoe. And the midsole also has that wave design kind of in the back that acts as a heel counter just to help keep your foot more secure. So, I mean, the support isn't a bad aspect at all for this shoe. They still hold up pretty solid. And between the two models, the Zoom Freak 3 is going to be a little bit lighter, weighing 404 grams for a size 10.5. The Dame 8's weigh a touch over that at 440 grams for the same size. So there's not a huge difference between the weight here, not enough to where you notice it on the court, and neither model feels heavy to play in, so I like that. To finish off with traction, the Dame 8's follow the same general design from last year's model, just with a slightly different pattern. So you're going to get some wavy lines instead of like the jagged arrows, and some indentions are also going to be in the middle of the shoe. But for this model, I wouldn't say they're going to be sticky, but they still do have some grip. And this is one of the more durable shoes, just one of the more durable feeling models. The grooves are deep, so it's always one of those shoes that I bring up whenever I'm talking about outdoor use. Like, the cushioning is good enough, and that's going to be part of it, but the traction seems like it will play and just hold up pretty well. And I have tested them outdoors multiple times, and I personally like how they feel out there. But now switching it over to the Zoom Freak 3's, this is another computer-generated design. It's like a topographical setup, and the whole idea was to kind of help optimize ground contact and give you better control. And I actually think that Nike did fix a few of the inconsistencies from last year's Zoom Freak 2 design, but I will say the traction still isn't going to be top tier. But similar to the Dame 8's, the grooves are pretty deep, so I mean, I would say these would last, outdoors for a while anyways. But I mean, to finish off with sizing, there's a little bit more room left over in both of these shoes. I'd say maybe the Dame 8's are a little bit longer, and then the Zoom Freak 3's are going to be slightly more narrow than the Dame 8's, so just keep that in mind. So for the final ratings and starting off with the appearance, neither of these models are my favorite, but I honestly do like Dame's line. Something just looked a little bit off to me about this year's Zoom Freak 3. Like, I'm not sure what it was, but I like the way the Dame's line's been looking, so I'm going to start off with the Dame 8's. For cushioning, that's a spot that, neither shoe is going to be jaw-dropping. They both play good, not great, but you do have a little softer feel in the Zoom Freak 3's. Just feel like you got some extra bounce up in the front thanks to those Zoom units, so I'm going to go with the Zoom Freak 3's here. For materials, I mean, you got the same retail price. Neither shoe feels high or low quality. It's just kind of sitting somewhere in the middle there, so I'm going to go with the tie here. For support, the Dame 8's didn't really do a lot to help this year's model. Like, you do have that Achilles pillow there, but I didn't really feel it helped much. The Zoom Freak 3's, they did add that strap, and they kind of paired it with that outrigger. And the Zoom Freak 3's, I'll say they don't feel quite as nice as the Zoom Freak 2's for support, but I do think they feel more secure compared to the Dame 8's, so I'll go with the Zoom Freak 3's here. And then to finish off with traction, I'm going to come back to the Zoom Freak 3's again. Both models are pretty average for the traction, but there is just a little bit more bite on the Zoom Freak 3's from what I've felt. So that is going to lead to me going with the Nike Zoom Freak 3 as the better shoe to hoop in. Both shoes are going to retail for $120, so you can just kind of watch that. So, I mean, now whenever you look at how they play, for the most part, it is going to be really similar between these models, but like for cushion, traction, and support, the Zoom Freak 3 just barely edges them out, barely edges out the Dame 8 in those categories, but it is still two well-performing models here. There just isn't really a specific category that jumps out and grabs my attention. Thank you guys for taking some time to watch. If you're interested in buying the Nike Zoom Freak 3 and you want to support our channel, just click the link here on screen, or we have links for both shoes down below or in our bio, so feel free to check that out. But until next review, I'm Landon from Shoewear. Peace.